everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to the Midnight Terrors podcast. I'm your host today, Kevin. Down a Jason, unfortunately, but he will be back very soon. But nevertheless, we have an awesome episode here for you. A very special guest, someone that I'm very excited to have on the podcast. Hold the applause, please. We would like to welcome to Midnight Terrors for the first time Mr. Jason Yachanin. You know him as Arby from Poultrygeist Night of the Chicken Dead, Spider from VHS, a role on the show Blue Bloods, and he is also the writer of the Mysterious Happenings book series. So welcome, Jason. How are you?
I'm good. You wanna know what I was just thinking?
What's that?
Screw that other host, man. This is his loss.
I agree, man.
This is a once in a lifetime opportunity here.
I agree, man. I agree. Hopefully you find us cool enough by the end of the episode to want to grace us with your presence again. But
hopefully you find me cool enough.
Oh yeah.
So I guess we'll find out. I guess we'll
see
how we both feel at the end.
Yeah, it's like a first date, basically, right? You go meeting from a.
I think it's going well so far.
Me too. Okay, I'm excited. I have to ask, how many different pronunciations have you gotten of your last name?
I was going to say, you actually pronounced it correctly. And I think you're the first person maybe ever to have done that. So
I wish that I could take credit for that. I think I actually asked you, I saw your video promotion for the con that we met at, and you said it there. And I'm like, okay, got it. And then I think I asked you to confirm if that's how you say it.
I think what I get more than anything is Yachanin or Yachanin. Those are the two that I probably get the most. But it's actually, like you said, Yachanin, which is weird because it is a CH, but it has an SH sound. So I don't know why. It has something to do. I'm half Czechoslovakian, half Italian, so it has something to do with the Czech side of things. But I can't tell you what that is, but yeah, you did it. Awesome. You got it right.
Awesome, man. Well, it is an honor to have you on. It was a total blast meeting you about a month ago at that last con that we were at together. And Jason and I, my co-host, could have spent like hours more talking to you at your table. And
thank you
and talking with you about your work. And I've had a chance to dive into your books a bit and really enjoying reading those. And we obviously enjoy your work with the movies as well. So I definitely wanted to get you on here to introduce you to the audience and have them hear a little bit about you.
Hello, audience. They're probably like, oh, this fucking guy.
They're thinking this guy should just take over the podcast. He's way cooler than the usual co-host.
Wow.
Got the charisma going. I love it.
Hey, I like your background, by the way.
Thanks, man. My friend Jules, who is in the local Rocky Horror Picture Show Shadowcast here, actually made this for us.
Cool. Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah. Shout out to Jules. Love you, Jules. She did a great job with that.
Go Jules.
Go Jules. So we always start the exact same way whenever we get a new guest on the show, and we always got to ask, as a horror podcast, what was your intro to horror like? And as Jason would say if he was here, what movies fucked you up?
Oh, well, I mean, the one that still gets me to this day, and I don't know what it is about it. It just gets under my skin, is the original Exorcist.
Oh my God, yes.
I'm not sure what it is about that. In fact, I do talk about that in, you mentioned my book. So it's a trilogy, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm working on the last one right now. And there is a mention of what actually happened to me watching that movie. It was in high school. All of my friends were getting together, but we were going to watch Tommy Boy. And then all of a sudden they're like, no, let's watch The Exorcist instead. And I was like, what's that? I don't know what that is. Now, mind you, we're going from Chris Farley to, The Exorcist. And that really, really did a number on me when she starts in the bed and the voice comes out. I did. I mean, and this is no lie. I mean, I did sleep with my lights on in my bedroom for maybe about a month. I mean, I was really scared of that movie. And even now, like, I'll watch it, but it still gets me. And the new one that just came out, I have not seen that yet. I'm not sure how I feel about seeing it. I probably will, but but I'm scared. I'll be honest with you. There's something that just, I don't know, just gets me. And there's also something you can't replace with that grittiness of the films from the 1970s. You know, there's just something about like the way they're filmed. And it's interesting with all the like CGI and special effects we have today. I still think it's more effective what they did in the 1970s than compared to some of the things you see today. Just my opinion. Just my opinion. Yeah.
I agree, man. We were actually just talking about that on another recording last night. Jason was talking about how one of his intros to horror was the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and
Oh,
he had the best way possible to watch it. He watched it on a grimy VHS tape, had to rewind it, and
yeah.
he was checking the time frames to see how much longer was left.
He had to fix the tracking on the right on the
Got the
but
staticky blue screen.
but to tell you the truth, like I guess my first intro, I think that was the other part of the question was maybe Tales from the Crypt. Actually,
Oh,
I my best friend growing up, who is my best friend in the book. I know we're kind of jumping around.
sure.
The books are actually based on real. All the people in them are based on people from my sophomore year of high school in 1996. So he was over one day, and we were just flipping around, and we came upon this show, and I was like, "Oh, this is really cool. What is this?" And it was the episode. I'm trying to think. It was like the news reporter who has to spend an evening in this like haunted house, and he's trying to be, oh, this isn't haunted, and then I, I don't know if you know that episode,
Yeah.
but that kind of hooked me. I was like, oh, this was awesome. I love this. And then from there it just um kind of went from there. But Tales from the Crypt, yeah, it was
There we
actually
go.
like, I started off, well, I mean, maybe the original Ghostbusters, as maybe my favorite movie growing up as a kid, which it's just like a horror comedy.
Yeah.
But I was kind of on like the sci-fi realm too. Like I was a big Predator fan, I was a big Aliens fan. But then when I found Tales from the Crypt, I kind of transitioned.
Yeah.
I guess we'll say. But
Well, you bring up an interesting point because, reading your books and just seeing your acting roles, it seems like your work is like a product of the 90s and the way you carry yourself is a product of the 90s. Is that pretty accurate to say?
I mean, people say that like high school, those are your formative years, right? Well,
Hmm.
I was a 95 to 1999. And, this is in the heyday of all the great Green Day music and all the, I mean, if you were into the boy bands and stuff
Yeah.
like that, I mean, I love the 90s. I mean, I suppose I grew up in the 80s, but like, my first taste of romance was in the 90s. So yeah, I would definitely say I'm a product of the 90s. And it if you look around, it's coming back.
A little
It's
bit,
coming
yeah.
back. I do think it's coming back. So I think my books have kind of come out right at the perfect time. I mean, I don't know if anyone's wearing like the Janko pants anymore, but it's, yeah, I mean, that's the 95 to 99. That's like when you come into your own, and
Hmm.
you experience some things for the first time. And so yeah.
That's beautiful. And I mean, if people want to bring back the Jenko jeans, I don't think any of us would say no.
Did I ever
um,
have a pair? I was a skater, so I mean I had some pretty big pants, although I don't know if I had the Janko ones.
There you go. Well, we'll definitely talk into how the 90s definitely influences the stories that you tell in the books. But before the writing element came in, how did you get into acting? Like, did horror play a role in that? Or what was your intro to acting? What made you want to pursue that?
You know what? It was actually my older sister and my older brother. Um, they were, let's see, my brother is he 4 years ahead of me? And my sister's maybe he's maybe 3 years ahead of me, and my sister's maybe 1 year ahead of me. And I would go see them, especially my brother, perform at our high school
Hmm.
in some shows. He didn't get into it as much as I did. But he did a couple one act plays, he did a couple like improv shows there. And seeing that, I was like, man, that looks like fun. I think I could do that. I want to do that. And so, once I got to high school, I had a little bit of an easier transition maybe than some kids. Like my brother was already in high school, my sister was already in high school, so I already knew a lot of like the theater kids and some of the theater professors, and I just went to the first audition that was available when I started high school, which was the musical Godspell.
Mhm.
I don't know if you're familiar. Uh and that was the first show I got into, and just from then on I was just like, I'm auditioning for everything I can audition for. And after high school and I went to college, same thing, whatever improv classes I could get into, theater classes, musical theater, and that was it. And so I really say it was more my sister and my brother who kind of
Very
got me
cool.
into it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can relate to that as, so I'm a local musician here where I live in South Carolina, and I definitely grew up going to watch my older sisters play for like talent shows and,
Mm-hmm.
open mics and karaoke bars and things like that. So it definitely, the older sibling element definitely leaves a mark on you, almost as much as like say your parents, and your
Mm-hmm.
upbringing that way.
I
Um,
think I think that's also how I got into skating, because my
mhm.
brother was into skating. All of his friends would come over and they'd all skate, and it was like, oh, that looks like fun. I want to do
That's funny.
what do you play, by the way?
So I play acoustic guitar and I sing.
Cool. Cool.
So I like to do a lot of the definitely touch on the Green Day stuff because later Green Day was my intro to
Okay.
wanting to play music when American Idiot came out. So,
Oh, an excellent album.
oh yeah,
Excellent album. Um, do you write your own stuff too, or is it
yeah,
just okay?
I tend to lean into that. I guess you could call it pop rock. Like I grew up hearing a lot of like Third Eye Blind and really
Mhm.
catchy, pop rock like that. Lifehouse. So I guess that you would say it would be in that element
Okay.
with the songs that I write. But then also I like to incorporate my love of horror into the lyrics that I write. So I kind of like dark sounding stuff.
I'm gonna have to hear some of this. I'm
I'll
gonna
have to
have to hear
send you
some of
some of
this
that.
now. Yeah. But the two bands you just mentioned, huge in the '90s, right? Third
Hmm.
Eye Blind, right? Lifehouse. Weren't
Yes.
were they more like 90 what?
Well, I think Third Eye Blind's self-titled that Red album was
Mm-hmm.
97. So that
97.
was like peak mid to late 90s. And then
There
they
it
carry
is.
on with the Blue album in 99. And then Lifehouse
Mm-hmm.
was probably right around that same time and then they would blow up like in the early 2000s probably.
Yeah.
So which the early 2000s I always kind of look at as like a weird carryover from the late 90s like we were still
Was
trying to let go.
is that like the Limp Bizkit kind of like
Yeah.
okay, all right. That's like when like rap metal kind of,
Mhm.
is that when okay.
New metal stuff, Linkin
Okay.
Park and Kid Rock and
Mm-hmm.
Slipknot, all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff.
Okay.
That's good stuff.
Mushroom head?
Oh yeah, love
Okay. Yeah.
Mushroomhead.
Yeah, there we go.
um, but that's a really cool story how you got into acting. And so so we'll touch on Poultrygeist here for just a second. That was my
Hmm.
intro to your work as an actor, and then from there finding your writing was Trauma because I wonder, did you know about Trauma before you got involved with them?
I did not. No.
Okay.
As an so once I graduated college and I moved to Manhattan, um, as an actor, I just kind of like started pounding the pavement, right?
Hmm.
So every week there's a publication that comes out that lists auditions. And so I would, now this was before like social media and before all that. I'm talking like when there was still like black and white headshots, and you mailed it, you snail mailed your stuff. You had to buy a
Hmm.
stamp, you had to get a stamp. So every week I would just go through this publication and kind of circle like, oh, okay, that I could maybe do that. That kind of fits my type, my niche, you know. And so when I saw the ad for Poultrygeist, which was in this publication, it's called Backstage, by the
Hmm.
way. It was looking for like a younger guy, kind of on the nerdy side, but like likable, becomes the hero, has to be able to carry a tune, kind of thing. And I said, huh, I can do that.
Yeah.
so so I sent it in, mailed it in, and about 2 weeks later, got a call from his name was Matt,
Hmm.
uh, and was like, hey, we want you to come audition. So at the time, Trauma was in the Hell's Kitchen area in
Yep.
New York City. Now they're in Queens, but so went to their building, and you know started going through the various rounds of auditions and callbacks, and I think it was maybe like 9 callbacks until
Wow.
they said, okay, yeah, you're Arby. I really thought the guy who I was kind of like, we were the last 2 up against, he got naked actually in one of his callbacks. I thought maybe that was going to seal the deal for him, but it didn't. So I don't know.
Well, that would be a serious letdown to go to that
Yeah.
extreme and then not get the call back.
Like, I got naked for you. What happened?
Oh, geez.
But yeah, so that's kind of, so once I got the role and I told my brother, going back to my brother, he knew all about them because he was a big Sergeant Kabuki Man fan and Toxic Avenger. I mean, I knew like growing up, I knew of them like with the cartoon, but I had never really dived into it. And so he was like, "Oh my God, just wait until you see what kind of fans this company has." And yeah, he wasn't lying. I mean, they're some of the most loyal and enthusiastic fans around, which is lovely, right? Especially as like an
Oh, yeah.
actor. And so yeah, so once I got the role, they gave me a couple films to watch to familiarize myself, and it was a little shocked. I was like, oh boy, what the hell did I just do? What did I get myself into? But
I remember you explaining that at the con, that you had that sort of switch
but
before you got into it.
but it really was one of the most fun and memorable times I've had as an actor.
Yeah.
And I would not have, I would never replace it for anything. I mean, it was like just some of the memories that I now have, just like a summer you don't forget kind of thing,
Exactly. And it is, such a fun movie. We covered it on the podcast a few months back and we had a good time with it. And it seems like with Trauma, you talk about the dedication of the fans. That seems like it would be actually in line with your upbringing as a skater, punk rock kid, and being fans of, going to see these shows and like regularly listening to these bands. Is that pretty accurate, you would say?
Oh yeah. I mean, like, I know you mentioned like the Third Eye Blind and things like that, but like my kind of growing up was like going to see NoFX, the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, Face to Face, the Bouncing Souls. And so like when these bands would come to town, I mean, it was just like, oh yeah, like the fans would just come out and it's like, fuck yeah, we got to see these groups. And that's how I feel like the fans of Trauma are. They're just like, oh hell yeah, I'm like, I will follow Lloyd to the ends of the earth. And that's how we were with like this music, of like Green Day coming to town up, like, so yeah, I would think, I think the punk kids kind of really do align with with that horror kind of Trauma fans, and like but I think they're some of the best fans,
Absolutely.
in the world, some of the most dedicated and hardcore. I mean, I'm very honored by this, but I mean, like, somebody has a tattoo of my face on them.
That's awesome.
I'm very honored. I don't know if I deserve that, but I mean, that's the kind of dedication we're talking about. So
Well, it's like, again, going back to music and horror, are very closely linked in that you can hear a song and the singer writes like about whatever they're feeling, and then you hear it and you hear something completely different, and then you talk to them and they go, I never thought about that, but that's really cool that you have that interpretation. And I feel like that's how horror movies go. And it's even something like Trauma, where people would go, this is a movie that's like a comfort movie for me. I watch it all the time,
I don't know if it was you who told me this, but someone at that convention you mentioned said that they used the song from Poultrygeist as their wedding song.
I remember
Now,
that.
I mean,
I think I was actually standing right behind the guy that told you that.
talk about interpretation. Now, I didn't particularly see the songs as like,
That's
that
fantastic.
I guess they're romantic in like a gross kind of way.
Yeah.
Right. So,
In a splatter gore kind of way. Yeah. That's incredible. And, so we've touched on how the 90s has bled into not just your work with acting, but with your writing. And like, so you actually asked me at the con, what year did you graduate high school? And I said 2011. You went, oh. And then I was explaining that I was like, well, I was born in 92. So I still, grew up from a kid's perspective, but I grew up, around all that stuff that was going on. And, my sisters were into the punk rock scene. So I would listen to like Blink 182 and MXPX and, all that
excellent
stuff.
bands, excellent
Right.
groups. Yeah. Yeah. Travis Barker is one of my favorite drummers.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
And which Blink 182 reunion going on, and those new songs are amazing.
Wait, say it again? You kind of cut out.
The Blink 182 reunion that's going on with Tom back. They released a couple songs like a few weeks ago, and they were so good.
I've never seen them actually in concert.
I actually have not either. I would love to see Blink 182 live. But you were talking about how like that 90s period kind of bleeds into the writing, and like right away just reading the book, like I feel nostalgic reading the stories that you're writing. And I love that the way everything's portrayed is just like a conversation that you would have with your friends. So where did you get the idea to take like your experiences from that time in your life to turn it into this horror story?
So I think I mentioned that everything in the book is true, right? Everything. The only thing that's made up is, and I don't want to give too much away, is when it kind of takes that little supernatural twist, right? So at the time that I was like thinking about writing these books, I mean, I know this sounds so cliched, but what do people always say? They say, well, write about what you know. So I said, okay, all right, that's interesting. What do I know about? What do I know about? Well, I thought, my mom and dad to this day have this really weird habit of staying up really late. Okay. And I'm talking about until like 4 a.m. in the morning, right? They have this I don't know why they do it. They still do it. But when I was in high school, I'd wake up at night and I would hear them down there. I hear the coffee pot going, and I'm like, it's 3:30 in the morning. What the hell? Or what are you on, like missile watch here? What are you doing? Like, why are you up? And so around the time that I was trying to write the books, I thought, you know what? That's such a weird thing that not a lot of people's parents would like do. A lot of them would tell me like, my parents go to bed at like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. So I thought, I've got something here. I can build on this. This is a really weird thing that they do. And so I think your question was, how did what was the question again? I ramble. I go into so many different tangents.
Where did you get the idea to take this, your real life stories to turn it into this horror story?
Yeah. So I thought that was actually a really weird thing that they did. And couple that with my dad's wedding ring, right? Okay, this is mine. There it is. But my dad's in real life is gold, and it has all these weird markings on it. Okay. Now I've asked him what the markings have meant, and he's never told me, actually. He's never told me. He would always just say, like, oh, well, it's just something, blah, blah, blah. Something between your mom and I, which I also found really weird. So I thought, okay, you know what, motherfuckers, if you're not going to tell me what it means and why you're up so late, I'm just going to make it up myself. So I took those two true things, my dad's strange ring and their weird nocturnal habits, and I said, there's a story here. And so I took everyone from my time in high school, and I kind of blended it all together into this mystery, the supernatural mystery. And so everything you read about, the people, the locations, all the little nuances about like my likes, my dislikes, the pop culture references, everything is from that time of period in my life, except when, again, and I don't want to give it away, when it goes on that little supernatural journey, that's the only part that's made up.
Yeah. And that's one of you brought up, how you're talking about your interests and your dislikes, and you describe yourself in the book, which you've renamed yourself to Justin Yachanin.
Yeah. Well, just Justin. I don't know if I ever revealed my last name. Did
Oh,
I?
that's so weird. In my head it sounded like you did when I read it.
Wait a minute. I haven't reread the first one in a while. I may have changed it, but it may have started with a Y.
There you go. But you describe yourself in the book and you talk about your interests from from that era and like your high school experiences. And I'm wondering, one of my favorite like aspects of the story when you're speaking is that you'll interject little like parentheses conversations about like you'll name something from the 90s and then go, oh, by the way, this is what this was, this is what we did back then. And like you described like what a half pipe is, and so I'm thinking in my head, like when I'm reading that, I'm like, so okay, so I know what a half pipe is, but I'm wondering, when you're telling those stories, are these based off of like real interactions you've had, maybe to people younger than you, where you are explaining 90s culture to them?
It's so crazy. Like some of the things that, but now that I'm older, I'm 42 now, it's just kind of crazy. Like some of the things that I just assume everybody knows.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I was talking with a friend of mine, and she's in her 30s. Okay. Do you know she doesn't know how to tell time on a clock with the hands?
Wow.
And I was like, what? You don't know how to? She's like, why would I need to know? I just look at my phone. I was like, okay. So when I was writing this, I had always remembered reading something about the more detail you can give, the better, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want to assume that someone knew what a quarter pipe was or what a half pipe was, because if you never skated in your life, maybe you don't know what those things are.
Mm-hmm.
So I just made it a point that whenever I was describing something, like for example, I was in the drum line in high school, right? I marched snare, I marched the quads, which is the 4 drum, right?
Mm-hmm.
Although I think my junior year we actually got quints, which has a little 5 drum, little spot drum in the middle.
Yes.
But I mean, if I was just talking to someone randomly and I was like, oh yeah, I learned how to play paradiddles today, they'd be like, what the fuck is that? Is that something on TikTok? And so I thought, like, you know what? Let me just give as much detail as possible, because I was trying to, if you're not from that skater culture, if you weren't from the marching band culture, I wanted people to feel like, okay, maybe I didn't do these things in high school, but Jason's still making me a part of it by explaining what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted all the dialogue to sound very true. That like, if you were to read these books, it was like, man, I feel like I'm in high school with Jason. And I think I'm a pretty welcoming person. I will be like, oh, hey, yeah, I just did this trick on the skateboard. Oh, you know what it is? Do you know what an ollie is? It's like when you pop the tail back and then you slide your foot against the grip tape. So I feel like I write the way I talk,
Mm-hmm.
which I was hoping helped the dialogue sound more authentic. So I will do some explanations. Hey, in case you don't know who Led Zeppelin is, because not everyone does, even though, I mean, I think that's kind of crazy. I'll say, hey, if you don't know who Led Zeppelin is, check out this song. Just check out this one song.
Yeah.
Just to try to like include everyone, So that was my idea behind that.
Yeah. And I appreciate the shout out to the drum line and band and stuff like that, because I was a band kid from middle school through college.
What'd you play?
I played tenor saxophone for a lot of it.
My
Started
sister
on
played
alto.
sax.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Started on alto, moved to tenor, and then even played Barry for jazz band for a little bit.
Awesome.
So,
I've actually, now that I'm older, have thought about, I wonder if it would be easy to learn saxophone. I dig it. And I mean,
I recommend it.
I think back in high school is like, oh, the drum line, like those were the cool kids. And, like you wanted to be in the drum line. But thinking back on it now, I think the saxophone is kind of cool, actually.
Oh yeah.
You listen to some 80s songs and every solo is like a sax solo, right? So,
yeah. And I'm starting to see more rock bands even nowadays. I don't know if you listen to the band Ghost at all, but they have a really, really cool instrumental song that just builds and builds and builds. Kind of sounds like Queen instrumental, and then they throw a saxophone in there just for the hell of it.
You know what? I don't know the band, but I like the name.
Oh, check it out. Ghost is they basically have a big church set up, and the character plays like a priest character that goes by Papa Emeritus 4. And
Okay.
he's a whole in-stage character. It's very
Cool.
entertaining.
Oh, cool.
But I mean, even just reading like the part where you're talking about being in the drum line and getting ready for class, like I just flip back to my band memories in there, and I just like the band room in itself was like a culture. And
Oh, absolutely, right? I mean, it was like its own world that not everyone had access to either.
yeah, and like I now tell stories of like my friends like disappearing and then finding that they had shoved themselves into the sousaphone case. so so it's just like
Okay, I'm not proud of this, but someone put me in the quad case once. Now that was being like being in a coffin. Okay, I'm telling you,
no.
that was pretty freaky. But the band room itself, like we would skate in there. Like if no one was in there, like we could skate it. It had steps. It had like, you know, you could technically maybe get like a slide in because the steps had this plastic covering on them. Oh yeah, it was. I can still see it in my mind, plain as day. Yeah.
That's beautiful. But yeah, it feels very conversational and very fun, and like it's the way you write makes it easy to visualize everything, and I think it really just throws you into the story for sure. And you've said that you've modeled, you know, all the characters based on yourself and other people in your life, and I thought that was a really cool like writing technique for telling the story. Did you find that that was easier to flush the story out because you had that base to work with, or was it ever a challenge to stay molded to that and keep the story going?
You know what? Actually, it was. I found when I was using the, you know, people from my you know, high school days, my best friend growing up across the street, my girlfriend, so Leslie in this in the book, we're not technically like boyfriend and girlfriend yet,
Right.
but like, you know, there's something happening there, right?
Yeah, I love that dynamic. That feels so real.
um you know, that was a little easier because some of these things in the book actually took place. So like when I'm talking, well, okay, when I'm talking to Leslie like backstage at our theater, I mean, that actually happened. The conversation we had may have been different. Like what we were talking about in that scene, like I think my parents are in touch with like extraterrestrial beings. Okay, so that maybe didn't happen, but like, you know, being backstage with all the lights off and like us talking really closely and like that energy we could sense between us, that happened. I mean, that actually happened. So, you know, pulling from my experiences did make the writing easier because I was just kind of like reliving those memories. So in the second book, when I introduce a few more characters who weren't based on real people, you know, it was a bit more challenging because I was, you know, what's their voice? You know, who are they exactly? Like, you know, my best friend growing up, his real name is Brendan. You know, him and I, like, I know our dialogue. Like we spent almost every day together. It was like second nature. But then when you start introducing some of the other characters that were made up, it did become a little trickier because it was like, okay, well, how do I see this person playing out and like their through line and what do they sound like? I don't know if you're on the second book, but the detective character in it, really actually kind of my favorite character to write for. He was tricky, but are you on the second book yet?
I'm actually getting through the first one to try to like get everything familiar, and then moving to the second one. So I'm actually
I won't give much away, but he was my favorite character that I made up. But going back to the original question, the dialogue was easier with the people that I knew, just because a lot of those situations were just based on actual situations. So, you know, my Brendan and I would go into the woods. We had a tree that was like this that we would hang out on. That's where I had my first cigarette, you know. I didn't continue smoking, but he did.
Yeah.
And then he got into dip. Do you remember the dip?
Yeah, I do.
Nasty
Oh boy.
stuff. Nasty stuff. But
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Which I believe Brandon has one of my favorite moments in the first book where you guys are like, okay, I need to figure out why my parents are staying up late. We're going to do some reconnaissance work. And just that whole dynamic of you, like your character trying to wake him up, and then like you're like, okay, we're ready to go. And then he's just hard asleep again. It's just like all too relatable. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, and he would sleep over constantly,
Mhm.
constantly. So it was, that was fun to like think back on those things and then kind of like make them a little, make them my own with this story and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
like they were all based on actual, oh, and we would play this game. Okay, wait. We would play this game. Now we weren't very good at it, but we would try to sneak around our house without my mom and dad noticing and like spy on them. And they always knew. They always knew. Like, Jason, are you in the dining room again? I'm like, no.
Just the eyes in the back of the head when it comes to parents. That's
Fair.
fantastic. And
Yeah.
you kind of touched on this part of the writing process before where your idea was that you're going to take the real life experiences and things that you can't explain and make a backstory for them. But before you started to do that, I was wondering which idea came first. Did you always have the idea to do like a supernatural fun horror story like this, or did you think first like I would like to tell my personal stories first and then the supernatural came later?
I think okay, so let me just share this little tidbit. The writing of the story came about in two ways, two different ways. Okay. The one and I don't really know if this is part of your question, but I'm gonna
Oh, go
throw it
for
out there anyways.
it.
I'm gonna throw it out there anyways because maybe it'll help somebody listening. Um, the writing came to be because I was kind of in a bad place um in terms of my acting career. Okay. Um, I filmed a Blue Bloods episode, and from then I thought, okay, I finally got my foot in the door. It was a co-star role. That's good. Casting places like to see that. And so I thought, okay, things are really going to start rolling now. I got my foot in the door with this casting company, and yeah, I had a couple of more auditions with them, and then it kind of just stopped all of a sudden. Like a lot of things, just like for whatever reason, just like stopped. My auditions kind of dried up. I mean, they'd be like here and there. I was freelancing with a couple different agencies. They all dropped me, and all of a sudden, I was like, shit, I'm like, I thought my whole purpose here was to be an actor, and I got nothing going on. And I kind of got into a dark place. And my wife was like, maybe you should see someone, because you can only talk to me about this stuff for so long. And I was angry and I was bitter. And she's like, just talk to someone, And I said, all right, I will. I'm going to. Just if nothing else, it's just nice to have someone else to talk to who's not like family or your wife or whatever,
Mhm.
someone who has an outside objective. Excuse me. And he basically said, well, you know what, Jason? And now a few years have gone by now. And he's like, you keep talking to me about like you're a creative person and you need to be doing something creative. Now, and this was also now the time that social media is really blowing up and people are creating their own things. And I'm not great at that stuff. Like I think I mentioned that like I'm from the black and white headshot days. And he's like, you keep pounding on this door, this like acting door, and no one is answering. You need to, if you're telling me that you're like a creative person, you need to like make a choice to either create your own art or I don't know. And so he kind of posed me with this challenge of like, okay, maybe I do need to be doing something for my own like, mental health. And I know I'm not great on social media, but I've always had an interest in writing, but have never tried to do it. I don't know if you believe in this stuff, but during this time that I'm seeking like outside counsel and help, I visited 3 different psychics, and they were in two in New Jersey and one in Massachusetts. And all three of them separately asked me, had you ever done any writing?
Oh, wow.
Which I thought was kind of cool and kind of
Mhm.
interesting because I never had up to that point. Um, I don't know what they saw in the cards exactly. Again, I believe in this stuff. I don't know
Yeah.
how you feel, but I kind of took that as a sign and what my therapist was saying to me. And I said, okay, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to do it. I don't care. Like, I was not the greatest student. Now, I don't mean like I was a troublemaker or anything like that, but like, I just, school just didn't come. I had to study really hard to like do well.
Mhm.
Whereas my brother, he didn't study at all and he was like a genius, right? So I said, you know what? I don't care that I don't know about how to craft a story or the grammar behind it. I'm just going to write for up here. It was like my creative release. No one was calling me for auditions. I couldn't get any auditions, no matter how many, like, I would do these pay to meet casting directors. I would send in stuff and I couldn't make any ground. I was not gaining any ground. And so I thought, okay, I need to do something and I'm going to do this. And I'm not going to let any negative self-talk hold me back. There's people in this world called editors. They can edit my grammar if it sucks, which they did. And that's kind of how the whole writing process started.
Wow.
And it kind of saved me because it's now like if I am feeling like in a bad place, I immediately start writing. And I got to tell you, that's what helped me. But if anyone out there listening to this, I know I'm yammering on and on, is struggling in any way, shape, or form, I recommend seeing somebody. It's
Mhm.
not a sign of weakness. I think it's an excellent thing to have. And I recommend it to anybody. And I'm very open about it too, because it
Yeah,
really did help me.
absolutely. I
Was
agree.
that your question? I don't even know what that was. I
No,
tell you,
you
I go on these like tangents, and yeah,
I mean, that's why we do podcasts, man. We
yeah,
keep it real here. So,
yeah.
but I agree with you. I've been to a professional as well, and I encourage people to do it as well. It's good to have that different dynamic. And yeah, friends and family are great, but it's good to talk to a professional and get that stuff off your chest. And you hit something really beautiful with your story, which congratulations, by the way. That's such an inspiring story as
Hey,
well. And I've talked to a bunch of people about that same thing about having creative outlets and how that's important. And I had to learn that myself. There were times where I wasn't playing music. I was kind of like, I'm not the greatest guitar player and I'm, doing my best at the singing, but like I'm not always playing music. And so I'm thinking like, what else can I do that makes me like really happy and puts me in a good place? And that's kind of, I'm like, thinking about it, I'm like, well, I love horror and I just went to a horror convention. I want to feel like that at the horror convention and that community and that love that's in the air. I want to feel like that all the time. And that's kind of what this podcast was born from, was to emulate a horror con and do it here. And I tell people all the time that like find that creative outlet, find what works. You're going to try different things, you might fail, but you're going to find the right thing. And I've talked to people that'll say, oh, I'm not really a creative person. I don't really like have any hobbies or anything. I'm like, you'd be surprised that once you start digging, because there were people that would say that and then they're like really good at makeup and they start playing with that and they're like, yeah, this is great. I love like just playing with stuff when I go home. So that's a really beautiful story and I appreciate you sharing that.
and that's not to say that like I have a social media page, I have an Instagram account, I have a TikTok account, but to kind of jump off of what you said, you kind of find what you're good at, and yes, I'll do some posts and I'll try to promote the book, but I mean there are some really good people out there on
Yeah.
social media who like know the trends, they know the this and the that. I don't know. A lot of people assume that I am good at technology because I don't know, the glasses, the hair. I don't really know what it is, but I'm not really. But something about just like sitting down and writing something that I imagined or created, that was my outlet.
Hmm.
Kind of how like your podcast is yours. Someone's TikTok page could be theirs. you're right. It's just like trying what works, you know what I mean? And the writing just seemed to work for me personally, but
Mhm.
that might not be everybody.
Well, I'm glad that you took that chance and started writing it. I'm really enjoying going through the journey, and definitely looking forward to keeping going and seeing more of it.
But I don't know if I would have discovered it had I not, like, yes, the psychics put the seed in my mind,
Hmm.
but my therapist really presented me with the challenge, like,
Yep.
hey, you're telling me you're knocking on this door of auditioning and acting and no one's answering. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to let yourself stay in that dark place, or are you going to create something yourself that you don't, that no, you know, no one is telling me this sucks. We're not going to use you because you know, I'm going to cast my cousin instead.
Hmm.
Like the books are mine. It's my own voice, and no one can tell me like, no, that's no good, because guess what? I'm writing it.
Yeah, and you're doing it. You're doing it for you. When you're doing it for you and you're happy with it, like nothing can tear you down. So,
And you know, and I put it out there hoping people enjoy it, but you know, not everyone's going to. But
sure.
in, you know, in the end, it's like it's my creative outlet, it's my release, and it's my own um mental health that I'm kind of, you know, exercising there, and that's my outlet. So
I love it.
yeah.
And, I read when I picked up or when I was looking at the books online, I read the reviews and
Mhm.
people are latching on, man. I think you got something really special here and you're carving your own little niche there. And
Thank
I
you.
think that more people need to hopefully listen into this podcast. They'll go pick up the books and, give it a read.
Oh, I appreciate it. You know, nothing makes me happier when someone says like, wow, I like the dialogue sounded so authentic. I felt like I was like I could have been friends with you in high school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And so one other thing I wanted to touch on before we start to bring it home is I talked to you at that con that we met. Me and Jason got to talk to you, and I believe you had said that was your second con that you had done, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And how's that been for you? How's it been going to the cons and meeting people?
I I really enjoy doing them. I really do enjoy it. It, I didn't. I mean, there is like, it's like it's a life. I mean, people
Hmm.
like, you know, people kind of can carve their living out of doing these conventions.
Yep.
It's really interesting to see. First of all of the fans again that I've met, and maybe it's just a horror thing. All the fans so friendly, so enthusiastic, so like excited to be there. um I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm having a lot of fun with it. um you know, some of the people that I've met as like other guests are like, you know, oh, you know, you gotta raise your prices for this, and you gotta raise your prices. I don't know. I don't think so. I'm happy that there's people out there who want to come meet me,
Hmm.
and if that's the case, like, you know, I'm happy to like take a picture with you for free. I'm not going to charge you for anything bad. Like, you want to take a picture with me? Awesome, let's do it. Like, you know, who am I to be like, that's $20?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm really enjoying them. I've been able to see a part of the country that you know, I'd never really been to Massachusetts. I'd never been to, well, that's not true. I'd been to South Carolina, but I had done a show in Hilton Head. Uh, so I didn't realize at the time that I was going to the capital of South Carolina, which is Columbia, and now I know.
Yep.
What a beautiful area. Also, I love Southern food, so you know, um, I've really enjoyed it. I'm hoping that, like, you know, sometimes sometimes I feel like, really, you want me at your horror convention? Like, who? Really? Okay. You know, I'm hoping that like maybe as more people discover the books, and maybe I can gain a little bit more of that following, like, you know, I'll be invited to a few more. Um, but one of the goals when I wrote the books was, hey, maybe I could go to a couple horror conventions and like promote them. And look at that. It's, you know, I've done two now. And
Hmm.
so, you know, maybe try to keep the ball rolling. But I think your question was, how was I enjoying them, or how did I?
Yeah, just how's your experience been?
Yeah, I mean, it's been great. I won't lie, getting to Columbia, South Carolina was kind of tricky, but I made it. I survived, and yeah, I'm having a lot of fun doing them. I'd love to do one, and like, and I guess you would consider this one and the one I did in Massachusetts like a little smaller scale.
Mhm.
I would love to see like what one of the big ones is like. Now, I
Yeah.
mean, if I was ever invited to one of those, I'd be like probably at a table outside, you know.
No,
But
we gotta get you to like Horror Hound and Monster Mania, because I again you when Jason and I met you, like you were just all good vibes, the whole weekend, and like your dialogue and your dynamic with Tiffany Shepis right next to you was one of my favorite things ever.
yeah, she was great, and I had just met her
Mhm.
but we had that trauma
Yeah.
connection. So, but like, what do you consider one of the big ones? Is Horror Hound a big one?
Yeah,
Is
I would say Horror Hound, Monster Mania, trying to
Are
think
those
of.
South Carolina ones?
They are more like northeast, more
Okay.
like Midwest, I guess.
Okay.
Like Horror Hound has Indianapolis and Dayton, or not Dayton, Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio.
Well,
Um,
I'm from Ohio originally.
I was gonna say,
Did you
so
know that?
I did when I saw that, but when I mentioned, where you were from originally, Pennsylvania, right?
Well, okay. Now this is. I'll give you a little. I don't know how much time we have.
Oh, no
I'll
rush.
give you. I'll give you a little insight into the
Okay.
book. So, when I was writing it, and I was, and it was about to be out there, my dad was like, Jason, I don't want people, you're telling people like where we live. And because this is the house I grew up in on the
Hmm.
cover. Okay, that is my childhood home. My mom and dad still live there. I still go back there every Christmas. Oh, and this is the house that I was born in until I was 5, and then we moved to this house. Okay. But
Gotcha.
anyways, he's like, so I don't want people knowing where we live, and people are gonna come to the house and like try to find it. And I'm like, I mean, I don't think I'm gonna have that kind of like fan base. I
Yeah.
mean, I hope I do, but like he's thinking of like, okay, the Goonies house.
Hmm.
That house, okay, now I think it's changed owners, but the owner that lived in that house would put up signs like keep out, stay away, I don't want anyone. Hey, if you move into a house that's the Goonies house, I
Yeah.
mean, come on. So I was trying to say to him, Dad, I don't think that's going to happen, but to ease his mind, I said it in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
However, I did not grow up in Pennsylvania. I will not tell you where I grew up for my dad's sake,
Sure.
even though I think I just told you I was from Ohio. But I said it was Pennsylvania so that my dad's peace of mind was,
Okay.
I put him at ease.
Gotcha.
Now, I have a friend who just went to Cinema Wasteland. Speaking of conventions,
Hmm.
which is in Ohio, which is in the town right next to where I grew up. Man, I was like, God, why didn't I think of this? Next time he's there, or the next time someone I know who is in Ohio for like a horror thing, I'm gonna tell them to go to my house with like and like make a sign like, yeah, we love the book, and just as a joke, and be like, Dad, you got to look outside the house. Something's happening, and I just want him to be like, what the? How did they find us?
That's beautiful. They could do like a play on the "We Heart the Monster Hero" shirt from
Oh,
Toxic Avenger
oh
to
my God,
"We Heart
I'm
Jason Yachanin."
I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm so mad I didn't think of that. But but yeah, so that's why I set the book in Pennsylvania. It was for my dad's sake, so that he
Sure.
could sleep a little easier at night. Again, even if I had put it in Ohio, I don't think he's gonna have a mad rush of people, on his lawn. But
I mean, Tiffany Shepis was telling people to get in touch with you to do a podcast to say go to your house and climb into bed with you. So maybe if other celebrities are encouraging it, maybe that was the right choice.
oh my God, I've got to get somebody out there, just like, even if it's just like 2 or 3 people, like, yeah, I found the house. Like, taking selfies in front of it. That'd be hilarious.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, once again, I just, I thank you for all the work you've done, and I hope that we cross paths at another con or some other horror event sometime soon. As we sort of start to bring it home, I know that the Mysterious Happenings Part 3 is on its way. Is that where what the big picture is right now? Is focus on Volume 3? What do you have coming up in the future that people should look out for?
Yeah, so part 3 I'm currently working on right now, and I tell everybody this is the last part. It ends. This is a trilogy. Um, this is not something that's just going to keep going and going and going. I don't know. I don't want to say strong feelings about that. I have medium feelings on that. Whereas it's like, I think ending it and just this is what it is, and not trying to just, keep on going and going for the sake of, going and going. Not that these books are making much money, but just for like the sake of like,
Sure.
I'll just keep churning it out. No, I think it's definitely gonna end at the trilogy. So yes, the third book is kind of my main focus right now. I did just film a little cameo for a horror film that if you want to look it up, it's they're in the process of trying to like get it out there. It's called Amityville NATO.
All
Now,
right.
Amityville Horror Sharknado, Amityville NATO.
All right.
I probably don't need to tell you any more than that. But I did just film a little cameo for them. So I have that kind of wrapped up there. And the third book is my main like kind of focus. Yeah, if something pops up, in terms of like any conventions or any
Yeah.
small, well, actually, yeah, if any conventions pop up or anything like that, yeah, I, of course do them. But yeah, finishing the trilogy is kind of like my main and trying to get it, and trying to get it out there more.
Mm-hmm.
That in itself is, a lot of work. And I'm still trying to get it into where I live in New Jersey. There's a comic book shop and bookstore owned by Kevin Smith really nearby. Trying to get it in, trying to get
Yes.
it into there. Like, hey, Kevin Smith, So yeah.
Beautiful. I mean, so looking forward to seeing the next book. Any chance that maybe somewhere down the road, there's a lot of cool characters in here, a lot of 90s culture that we touched on. Any chance we would maybe one day see you be interested in a film adaptation of Mysterious Happenings?
If that happened, I would be totally down for that. You got the green light. I would love that. I really think I always tell people this. I always tell people this, like, you're not going to read, and I think I may have mentioned this, you're not going to read these books and be like, freaking Hemingway, Hemingway reincarnated right here. But like the writing is not that prolific, but I think it's fun. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
entertaining. I think there's a lot of commercial value, behind it. And I think it'd be perfect for a series, a film if someone was so inclined to do so. I don't know much about screenplay writing, but again, I didn't know anything about writing a book.
Yeah.
I'm sure I could sit down with someone and we could hash something up. So yes, I mean, I would love to see that. I think as like a writer, I mean, that's who wouldn't love to see their work like taken to the big screen. If something like that happened, yeah, I'd be totally down for it. And I think the other thing about the stories are there's a little bit of everything. Someone said on a review, like, yes, it's a supernatural mystery, but there's like a love story at
Mm-hmm.
the core of it.
I agree. You could almost do like a supernatural tale mixed with like Can't Hardly Wait or Empire Records or something like that,
I mean, I think there's just a little bit of something for everybody. So I think it does have like mass appeal. Well, at least I think it does. Someone else
Agreed.
might read it and be like, fuck you. No, it doesn't.
I agree, man. Well, I look forward to seeing where the trilogy goes. And as we wrap it up here, you want to hold up the copies of the books again and
Yes,
shout out
yes,
what
I'd
they're
love to.
called and where people can buy them.
Book one, The Mysterious Happenings at 2 Morning View, is available on barnesandnoble.com and Amazon. And The Mysterious Happenings on Hyde Avenue, The Lair of the Incubus, also available barnesandnoble.com audible.com and Amazon. This is book 2. This is book 1. Book 3 is currently being written. I think maybe I'm on chapter 5, maybe.
There you go.
And just a fun tidbit for any horror fans out there. The inspiration for the cover of the book. Now, I did not do the art. Check this guy out. It's Tom Grillo illustration. He's the artist, but I sent him the original movie poster of Fright Night.
Oh,
Do you remember that original movie
oh
poster
yes.
with like the vampire in the clouds?
Yep, the little
and
ghostly vampire above the house.
right, and the house. So, we've got the house with the lights on, and I don't want to give away, but there's something up here. We got the lightning, we got the lights, the clouds. So I kind of sent him that, and I said, so this is kind of like my inspiration. This is kind of what I'm thinking, and I let him kind of
That's awesome.
run with it. But I sent him like pictures of my house that my mom and dad live in, or that I grew up in, and then pictures of the house that I grew up in when we moved to the suburbs when I was 5. But this house is our actual house that I grew up in. And I know you haven't gotten to the second book yet, but again, that is all. There's a big section of it that takes place in that house with the basement. That whole story is true. So be interested for you to get to that part.
Absolutely. I'll have to message you whenever that happens.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, it has been a total blast. Where's the best place for people to keep up with, where everything's going? Is Instagram the best place to get in touch maybe and keep up with you?
Yeah, probably it's my name and then the number 23 at the end. And I think I quizzed you as to why.
I was going to ask you to tell this story because you said, do you know why it's 23? And I said, because it's 2023.
Right, which is not correct. So it's Jason Yachanin 23, and the reason why it's 23, I'm a really, really big basketball fan. I never played. Well, I played maybe when I was in 6th grade. I mean, I was on the red team or maybe the black team, one of those colors. I'm really bad at basketball. I'm only 5'8", unfortunately, so I don't really have good height for basketball, but I really, really love it. LeBron James wore 23 when he was in Cleveland. He brought the championship to Cleveland in 2016. No hard feelings to LeBron James. And so that's why it's kind of like a shout out to him.
Sure.
It's a shout out to my love of basketball. And I kind of just gave away where I'm from.
That's all good. All good.
So Dad, look out, Dad.
Beautiful. Well, hey, Jason, it has been a total blast having you on the podcast. Hopefully, again, you thought we were cool enough in person and on here to come back and talk with us one day.
I'd love to come back. Maybe when part 3 is out, we
Absolutely.
could. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you have a movie that you're fond of too, you can pick a movie for the show and we can dissect it together.
Oh, okay. That you do that for some of the podcasts.
Mm-hmm. We do interviews. We brought some guests on to go through movies and just talk about their favorite horror movie. And we could dissect something if you got one that you're particularly fond of.
I mean, I know we don't have time. I'll just leave you with this. I'm a big fan of Cabin in the Woods. I don't know if you've seen it.
We covered it over the summer, I believe.
How about that? Yeah.
There we go. We could do like a revisited episode featuring Jason Yachanin.
Maybe we could combine it with the book 3.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen Talk to Me yet. I really enjoyed that.
I have been hearing about it non-stop as like one of the most popular A24 releases of the last few years.
It's good. It's good.
There we go.
You should definitely check it out.
Absolutely.
Now, going back to the beginning of our conversation, did you see the new Exorcist yet?
I was actually about to throw that your way.
I knew it.
I saw it over the weekend and I give it a recommend. I actually really enjoyed it. I found it very scary, actually. Which is hard to do because you watch so many horror movies, you kind of get a little desensitized to it, but I found it to be very unsettling and an emotional roller coaster. So I give it 2 thumbs up.
Okay, well, okay. So a quick little tidbit. I was in a off-Broadway show for 2 years. It was it may have been maybe a little longer than that. It was the off-Broadway production of Our Town. And during the whole run of it, I had a really small, crappy little part. But during the run of it, we would have really big famous people play the role of the stage manager. So we had Helen Hunt come in one time. We had Michael Shannon in there.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. But we had an actress by the name, she wasn't the stage manager, but she was one of the moms in it. Anne Dowd, who is in the new Exorcist.
Yep, we were just talking about her. I somehow got my mom to go with me to Exorcist Believer. She supports me in all sorts of crazy shit.
Yeah.
So I
How'd she like
appreciate
it?
her. She actually liked it too.
Yeah.
She grew up with a mom, my nana, who thought that The Exorcist was one of the funniest movies ever made.
Funny.
So
Hmm.
that's a word you wouldn't hear too often, right?
I didn't see the humor in it, but maybe I should.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well,
But anyway,
hey, Jason.
but yeah, so she's in it. So
Yeah.
she's an amazing actress. So if you aren't familiar with her work, see that, or see Handmaid's Tale. She's in like,
Oh yeah.
whole thing of that. So yeah.
I need to start that show. I've heard it's great for like many years now.
She's excellent. She's excellent in it. Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, all right, I'll let you go. I know I yammer on.
No. You're good, man. This is why we do this. But hey, Jason, it has been a total honor and a total blast having you on the podcast. Everybody listening, please go pick up both of the Mysterious Happenings books. I think I'm going to call the episode like Mysterious Happenings with Jason Yachanin or something like that.
I like it.
I think that'll be perfect. But go pick up the books, people. Go follow Jason on social media. He is a total blast to talk to, and hopefully you'll see him at a convention sometime soon. And that's all we got for the Midnight Terrors podcast today. Get in touch with us, Midnight Terrors Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Shoot us an email at midnightterrorspodcast@gmail.com. You can check out our TeePublic store and grab a shirt, a hoodie, or a sticker, anything that tickles your fancy.
That.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'll send you one.
How do you get to that store? I want to go to that store.
It's on our Instagram. We have a link tree on there, and I believe it's the bottom link.
Oh, we were talking about Predator and aliens here. Here's my phone
Oh my
cover.
God, yes. I'm so glad we're doing video podcast for that. That's beautiful. But that's all we got for the Midnight Terrors podcast. Again, shout out to Jason Yachanin, and we appreciate you, my friend, and can't wait to do it again soon. And everybody, thank you for listening and watching. We'll see you all again soon. Peace.
Thank you.